Welcome back to another episode of Stop the Scroll. I am your host, Heidi Schmidt, social media strategist, agency owner, and in general, social media guru. I was called that today when I was interviewed for another podcast that's coming out in a few weeks. I don't really consider myself a guru, but we're going to roll with it. I was a little inspired for this episode. I was listening to one of my favorite YouTubers, and she was talking about the journey, like sharing more of the journey. And I have a whole episode that's going to come out soon talking about relatable content. The other day, I think I was like putting on my makeup and I was really inspired to talk about how starting a business is like training for a marathon. And I have a client who's a run coach, and she's probably going to be highly amused by this. I can't wait to tell her because it's so true. So basically, the background is I was listening to this podcast episode, and when she was sharing this book, which I will link in the show notes, and she was encouraging us to share the journey, what inspired you to become a social media manager, share the messy. And I was like, wow, I really just need to connect with my community more. I need to show up better. And it made me want to just be a better social media manager, which, I always want to be. So today, I want to talk a little bit about how starting my business was a little like the time that I just randomly decided to run a marathon. And a little bit of backstory, a little bit of backstory. We're going to go deep into like 2006, 2007 Heidi. And I was working at a government relations firm. It was really not a great place to be. I worked in a windowless office with three other people, and we edited legislative analyses that went out to clients. It was not a fun place. It was just very, very toxic. So my now husband and I had been dating for like 6 months. Before that, I had a really hard, messy breakup with my college ex-boyfriend, who at one point in time was like my best friend. And him and I were still kind of chatting, even though he had moved across the world. And he had mentioned that his dad was running the Boston Marathon. And I was like, well, I'm going to be straight up. I didn't jive with his parents. It's totally fine. Like, I ended up where I was supposed to end up. I married my husband. We've been married for almost 15 years. Totally worked out. But, 23, 24-year-old Heidi was very much like, well, if that mother effer can do it, surely I can. And I was really bored in my job and I needed a new challenge. So I decided to run a marathon. I ran the Marine Corps Marathon and I did not train very well for it, which is probably why, like, 2 marathons later, I shaved like an hour and a half off my time. My second marathon, I shaved an hour off of that first marathon time. So the point is, there is a lot of preparation and planning that goes into training a marathon. But some of us, hi, it's me, are just kind of throw spaghetti at a wall and do it. How the two are very similar. Start with setting goals. Like, why do you want to start a business? Why do you want to show up on social media? Why do you want to run a marathon? What's your why? Both of them, you need to have a why. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen for you. Research your training. Obviously, when I ran my marathon, one of the first books I read was The Non-Marathoner's Guide to Marathon Training. And it was a really helpful tool. I wish that I had found a community of runners. I wish that I had a training buddy. There were other things that I wish that I had done when I trained for all of those marathons, really. I could have done better. When you're starting a business, find a community. I have a community that's local to me that is full of women-owned businesses. I'm going to link to the Leading Ladies community. If you are local to Anne Arundel County in Maryland, or even not local, it is such a great community of women leaders, women business owners, and I have found many clients from there. That is my group. That's my jam. Those are my people. Find your people. When you're starting your business, you need a community. When you're training for a marathon, any race really, it's always fun to have a buddy. Before the pandemic, I had a group of friends. We all kind of there was a falling out. The point was that they held me accountable. Every Saturday, most Saturdays, we would run sometime, depending on the time of year, between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. And we all showed up for each other. And we not only showed up for each other for those training runs, like whether it was 5:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, whether it was 6 o'clock at night on a Thursday, or whether it was 6 a.m. on a hot August Saturday morning, we showed up. We showed up together, we ran races together, and they made me a better runner. So find a community, because your community when you're starting your business, like if you're in the early stages of that, no matter what stage you're at, if you don't have a community, go find one. Go find your people. Go find your people. I gotta say, one of the first communities that I got involved in was my local business association. I'm going to link to PBA in the show notes also. They're full of so many people that are just a wealth of knowledge about the community that I'm in, especially if you're like a local business. Maybe they're not your people, but it's still a community. And maybe the people that show up for the monthly lunches, maybe they're not your ideal customer, but chances are they know someone who is. So find your community and lean on them. Lean on them for proper training. Find out, hey, do you have a mentor? Do you have a business coach? Do you have a this? Whatever resources you need in your business, you're going to find that from that community. You've got to invest in the right gear. Legit, like, this is hilarious. I ran my first marathon with a pair of Nike sneakers, and I liked them because they were pink and they had that little Nike pod in them. Little did I know that those shoes would cause me so much pain. Like, you gotta have the right gear. Like, you gotta have the right applications to run your business, have a CRM, have a marketing automation system, an email platform, all of the things. You've got to have your gear in place, man. Because there is nothing worse. I remember this. This was my first marathon was 2007. So keep in mind, I'm aging myself a little bit. Not that I'm old. I'm not. I'm 41, whatever. But this is how terrible the technology was back then. And I think it would be hilarious to rerun, to redo a marathon, which I do want to do sometime before I'm 50. I want to run my fifth marathon because I think having, five is a good number. So if you're familiar with the DC metro area, I ran the Marine Corps Marathon, and the GPS on this little Nike pod thing that was in my sneaker was such a piece of garbage that I had Lance Armstrong in my ear, my little, pink iPod, probably first or second generation, thank you very much, tell me at like mile 18, congratulations, you've just completed a marathon. And me being like, as I'm running over the 14th Street Bridge, trying desperately to beat the bridge because the sweet bus was coming up on my heels, I was just like, holy hell, what is this piece of garbage? Shut up, Lance Armstrong. You're the worst. So invest in the right gear, invest in good gear, invest in good quality applications to help you run your business smoothly. Invest in those systems. I am currently working with my business coach who leads that Facebook group, by the way. If you know, you know, she's amazing, on how to streamline my systems, my team, because the feeling of overwhelm of someone managing double-digit social media accounts it's great. There's a lot of overwhelm sometimes. But my team is so good and they're great at creating all the content. So it's like I am the bottleneck and I'm trying to figure out ways to make myself not the bottleneck. So invest in the systems, the equipment, all of the things are going to help set you up for success in your marathon and in your business. Then there's the whole journey. When you first sign up for whatever race, marathon, half marathon, 10 miler, whatever it is, you're going to be super jazzed. Every time I sign up for a race, I go out and I map out my training plan. Do I stick to it? Probably not. When you're starting your business, make sure that you have a plan. What are your goals? We already talked about goals, but you're about to launch. Get excited, get jazzed, but pace yourself. Without pacing yourself, you're going to lead to burnout. I've felt that before. Oh my goodness, have I felt that before? And I felt that before in training. If you train too hard, you're going to injure yourself. You're going to get burnt out. And then you're going to stop running for like 3 weeks. And then you're going to be like, holy shit, I'm not ready for this race in 2 weeks because I skipped half my training. Maybe not half, but like a quarter of it. Fun fact, by the way, I am a certified running coach. I got that probably even my son was like a baby. So it must have been like 2016, 2017. I don't know. But I am a certified running coach. Fun fact. I have not consistently run since 2020. I still remember all the fundamentals, but I am a running coach. So I'm not just spewing, out of my butthole here. I actually know what I'm talking about. But you need to pace yourself. You need to follow a plan. Otherwise, you're just going to burn yourself out. You're going to burn yourself in business if you try to do all of the things too quickly, too fast, too all at the same time versus, hey, let me set these benchmarks. Let me say my first year, like I want to grow my following. I want to grow my email list. I want to have brand awareness. I want to get X number of clients. What do I need to do to get those clients? I need to go to one networking event a month. How am I marketing myself? Am I showing up on social consistently? Mapping out all of those things so that you're showing up consistently, but you're not going to burn yourself out. What do you need for resources? Do you need to hire someone? Or, if you have a storefront, are you just going it alone and you're just working all of the however many hours a week that you're open? So, really thinking about how you can prevent yourself from burning out. It's similar in training, you don't want to come out too fast. If you're coming from nothing, you cannot run 50 miles in a week. Does that make sense? I think it does. Like, you've got to build up to things. So in the business world, you're going to build up by setting up those systems and by having those plans and creating those strategies and plans and content calendars, all of the things to help you organize yourself so that you don't burn out. In marathoning, like in business, there are lots of challenges that you can overcome. Let me tell you about the time that I trained for the Vermont City Marathon, which is in my hometown of Burlington, Vermont. Hey to all my Vermont listeners, if you're out there. The other marathons that I had run, the first three, I did Marine Corps, Hartford, Vermont City twice. So the first two marathons that I ran were fall marathons. It's a little bit easier to train in the summertime, even though DC summers are brutal. I will say that like 15-ish years ago, they were less brutal than they are. I say this coming from Maryland, where it's been like literally 100 degrees for the past almost month. But no one really wants to go out and run 18 miles after a snowstorm. We lived in Stamford, Connecticut when I trained for Vermont City the second time, which was really, really, really flippin' hard. It was easier to train in DC in the springtime than it was to train for a May marathon in the Connecticut winters. That marathon is probably what made me stop running marathons. Like I just stopped. That was in 2010. And I decided that I didn't run past like 15 miles in that training plan, which was terrible. I was working a lot and there just wasn't great places to run around where we lived. And meh, the 18 miler that I actually, no, I did do an 18 miler, but I walked probably half of it because like I just didn't feel safe where I was. Stamford, Connecticut was not a friendly place for me to train for a marathon. Your mileage may vary if you live in Fairfield County, Connecticut. So you have to overcome all the weather, injuries, burnout, fatigue, all of the things you have to overcome when you're training for any race, really. Like, no one wants to go run out in the rain. So, are you going to skip your run? Are you going to move it to the next day? How are you going to overcome those obstacles? Similarly, in business, there's going to be challenges, man. There's going to be competition. There's going to be imposter syndrome. There's going to be financial issues. Let me tell you about the clients who haven't paid their invoices for me this month. Those are not fun challenges. Growing a team. I had never grown a team before, and I'm learning as I go how to kind of manage that team. Because ultimately, my team, they're all contractors. I'm not their boss. I'm like a client to them. How do you overcome those challenges? Both of them have all sorts of challenges that you got to overcome if you want to be successful in marathoning and in life. I kind of talked about this, but having that support system, it was really, really key for me. So my marathon PR was at the 2009 Vermont City Marathon, and I'm proud of myself because I beat Oprah's time. I came in, I think, like just around 5.5 hours. Listen, I got short legs. I am not a fast runner. Solid middle to back of the packer. But the thing that I loved the most about that one and my half marathon PR, which was ironically the Unplugged Vermont Marathon, which is also in Burlington, but starts in like my hometown of Colchester and runs down the bike path along Lake Champlain. And that marathon was right around my birthday in 2012 Adam was in Texas for AIT when he was in the National Guard. So I flew up to Vermont for my birthday and I ran this marathon, and my family saw me at least twice on that course. And then they met me at the finish line, and I just had so much fun. I'm going to get a little weepy here. My late grandmother meant so much to me, and having her be able to cheer me on those two races just meant the world. So have your cheerleaders, have the people, whether you're running a race or whether you're starting a business, like have the people who are just going to cheer you on no matter what. Having that support network is just so, so important because there's going to be hard days. In entrepreneurship, we know this. There are lots of hard days, so many hard days. And having that support network is going to keep you going. And they're going to be able to give you advice, and they're going to be able to be like, hey, maybe you should talk to your business coach about this. Or, hey, maybe you're being a little crazy right now, which is often what my husband says to me. And they're also going to be like, hey, maybe you should turn off the computer and, go touch grass, which my husband also says to me often. When you're running a marathon, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the mindset around marathoning. I read somewhere when I was training for my first marathon that like you have to be able to run 20 miles basically, because the other 10K that lasts 6.2, it's all mental at that point. And I can tell you my first marathon, I hit that mental block probably around like mile 16. And that's also where my legs kind of started to be like, meh. But I finished. I flippin' finished that race, and it was so fun. Although my husband will tell you, so this was again before we were married, that the Marine Corps Marathon, the last 0.2 miles, you go up a hill. He watched me finish with my old roommate, and they said that it was so painful to watch people just truck up that hill. Like eventually they had to go to the top. But watching people truck up that hill, and also the feeling of defeat because you had to go, so you run down, I forget the road that you run down, and then you kind of double back and then you go up the hill. So like they saw me as I was probably like 3/4 of a mile out, maybe a mile. And so they saw me and they were like, and I was like, oh, oh, oh. You think you're almost done. And it's kind of like that mental toughness. Okay, I just got to get to whatever that next goal, whatever that next milestone is for you. Whether you're training and you're like, oh my God, this is my first double-digit run. Or, oh my God, this is the longest run that I've ever run. For me, I am all about celebrating those little wins, like setting those benchmark goals and just celebrating the win of getting there. For me, when I started my business, my first big goal was to hit 6 figures. That was my first big goal. My salary had been stuck for like 5 years at like between the 50 and the $60,000 mark, and I just felt so underpaid and underappreciated. And my goal was to hit that 6 figures because then I would feel like I've made it. And now there are social media agencies that probably make multiple 6 figures, probably even 7 figures, and they probably have bigger teams. I don't know what they do. I would love to learn though. But I had to make along the way really tough decisions, like letting go of clients that just weren't high paying clients to make room for higher paying clients. When you have that goal, like, oh my God, I'm so close. And if I could just get one more client, but oh my God, I have this hourly client and I'm not making enough money here. Like, I made this decision, goodness, probably like a year ago. One of my first clients was paying me hourly, and I loved working with them. I loved the work that I did, but it wasn't social media work. And so I finally made the decision. I gave them my notice, and it was really hard to let go of that income. Similar to when you're training and hey, all your friends are going out on a Friday night, but you've got to run 15 miles the next morning. Like you've got to make those tough decisions. You've got to be able to say no. You've got to have boundaries. You've got to have guardrails that kind of keep you focused. Clients have come and gone over the past 4.5 years, but it's okay because you're always learning. And whether you miss a training run, like you're going to learn a lesson. Each of those setbacks that you're going to have, like even if you have to like oh my God, I gotta take a few days off because I'm injured, because my knee is really bothering me, or my hip's bothering me, or whatever, or oh my God, I have a head cold or a sinus infection, whatever that is, don't let that completely derail you. Similarly, like losing a client, like that doesn't derail me. The clients that I don't want to say lost, but like that have moved on are still firmly in my court. Like one of my clients, I absolutely love her. She is still one of my biggest cheerleaders. I'm not going to hold that against a client if they have to make, 'cause those are hard decisions as business owners that we make. I've made decisions sometimes very spur of the moment, but like when I decided that like I'm not going to go for the cheapest content creators anymore. I'm going to invest in my content creators and I'm going to pay them what they're worth because I know what it's like to be starting off, to have to build my portfolio, whatever it is that they're doing. I want to make sure that I'm investing in my content creators because when you invest in your people, you're going to get better work, if that makes sense. And if you invest in your training, maybe you invest in a coach. I've got a great one if you need a recommendation. And no, it's not me. If you invest in a coach, you're going to have that accountability and you're going to have someone who's going to keep you focused through those hard days, through the days when you're like, oh my God, I don't want to run. Oh my God, it's too hot. Oh my God, my foot hurts. I think I have plantar fasciitis. Whatever it is, the coach is going to keep you on the rails. And she's going to tell you when to rest and when you need a mental break. And hey, maybe it's okay to sleep in this Saturday. Like this is a week back on our mileage. So maybe it's a good week to kind of take off and reset and let your body rest. How you handle those setbacks really is the differentiator and really helps you grow. You're going to grow as a runner, you're going to grow as an entrepreneur when you handle those setbacks, and especially when you handle them with grace. We all experience those setbacks, those things that just aren't going the way that we want them to. If you're not growing on social media as quickly as you want to, in the grand scheme of things, the things that you're probably stressing about are probably not as important as they feel. And so giving yourself some grace, let yourself feel your feelings, absolutely. Be upset, be frustrated. Maybe you're not running as fast as you want. Maybe your times are still all over the place, your mile splits, whatever. Give yourself some grace. But then, equally as important, feeling of crossing that finish line. I still remember it. I will say, and this kind of goes back to being prepared and having the right gear. Like, I had no flipping idea what the weather was going to be like in October. Well, actually, no, I did. I thought it was going to be warm. I thought it was going to be warm that October that I ran the Marine Corps Marathon in 2007. And no, it was flippin' cold. Lesson learned. Lesson learned, have the right gear. I was so used to training in hotter weather, and I am a runner where I'm gonna dress like it's 10 degrees warmer than it actually is. Like there are runners who are just like it's 10 degrees colder because they don't like to be cold. Me, I don't like to be too hot. So I will dress like it's 10 degrees warmer than it actually is. And you set those goals for yourself, like really celebrate them. I remember how I felt like after every long run. I think I ran the length of the Mount Vernon Trail, most of it, like 90% of it. And I had my then boyfriend, now husband, pick me up down somewhere in Virginia outside of Alexandria, between Alexandria and Mount Vernon. And I was just so flippin' excited that I made it that far. Like I got up at 6 a.m., got myself over to the metroed over to Roslyn, and then hauled ass down the Mount Vernon Trail. And similarly, when I finished that first marathon, like, dang, I did not think I could do that. I know that this isn't super like social media-y, but I was inspired, man. And the YouTube video that I mentioned, it was like, share the journey. And I was like, you know what? Like, I want to share the journey. And here's my journey. You know, this isn't a lot about my journey, but it is about me. I ran a marathon. Woohoo! Um, but it's more about like to kind of get a little off track here. It's more about just like sharing a little bit more about me, like a little bit more about me, like the messy, what's in my head. This is my thought process. This is how I compare things. This is how I run my business. Because ultimately, yeah, social media is a big it's my thing, But there's so much more to being successful on social media than just understanding the algorithms or understanding the best practices. Sometimes it's really just about showing up and showing who you are and showing your journey and showing the messy. And that's why I'm talking about this all today, is because think about your journey and think about your goals and think about, are you setting yourself up for success? If you know that you could be doing better with your marketing, like what needs to change? What are the systems that you need to have? What do you need to invest in? Is there training that you need? Whatever it is, like think about that. So celebrate all of those successes. And each time you hit one of those benchmarks, think about what worked, what didn't work. We talk about every year, I kind of plan out my goals for the year. And I think back, like, what could I have done better? And what really worked and what didn't work? And what are some of those lessons? What do I want to take with me into the new year? What do I want to leave behind? And this is almost like a quarterly exercise, really, when it comes down to it. But I get a little granular and I look not just at the business as a whole, but also my marketing. Like, okay, I need to have a new lead magnet. I had wanted to have that for a goal last quarter, but it didn't really work out. Here's why. Life was busy. Reflect on what you learn along that journey and set future goals. I hope this little analogy episode was fun for you today. You learn a little bit more about me, some of my background, the good, the bad, the ugly. And on that note, I'm going to close for here. If you love this episode, leave a review, connect with me on social media. I am at Heidi Schmidt Creative on Instagram. I'm really trying to be better about being present there and having a community. And even if I don't post for a flipping week because life, busy, whatever, I am still there. I respond to comments, I respond to DMs. Please, please, please reach out. Visit the website, www.heidijschmidt.com, to connect. And to download any of the resources that I mentioned, I will link to all of them in the show notes. And until next week, show up, show the good, show the bad, show the ugly. I want to see it. Feel free to share your wins and your weird business analogies with me because I want to hear them. All right. Until next week, bye.